This show is brought to you by Panini America, maker of the most collectible sports cards on the planet. The Luminance Football Card Series features NIL autograph cards from players including Arch Manning, Quinn Ewers, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Dylan Raiola, DJ Lagway, and Luther Burden III. To start collecting, visit PaniniAmerica.net. And I got a pack of Luminance right here, Ari. Now, you know a lot more about this stuff than I do. So you need to tell me if we're going to rip this pack open right now. You need to tell me if I have struck gold. Because I'm just going to play the game where I pull, like, if it's not one of the college stars that we just talked about, I'm going to play the game that I always play where it's an NFL guy and I'm like, okay, here's where he went to college. So that's just my default mode. So here we go.
Well, I just want you to know, Andy, that I watch YouTube videos of people opening up packs in my free time. So this is electric for me. Alabama.
Woo! There you go. Hey, he played this week. He was not. Okay, well, Sean Payton said they were terrible on offense, but okay, we got Bryce Young. Oh,
I don't know.
We got Nick Bosa, or wait, no, this is Joey Bosa. I think you know where he went to school. Yeah,
Ohio State. Yeah.
AOC, Aiden O'Connell,
Purdue,
baby. We got a Deebo Samuel Savage card.
South Carolina.
You know, that's right. He was a savage in that one game against North Carolina where he basically won it single-handedly. This is like a special card, right? Because it says he's a savage.
That's called an insert.
Oh, I like that. That's a beautiful card. I love it. That's very cool. Trey McBride.
Very good young tight end for the Cardinals. Hey, Andy, you got to look at that closer because those are serial numbered.
Oh, okay.
The color.
Where do I find the serial
numbers on the front?
Oh,
and Trey McBride.
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah. This is a out of 150.
Yep. And
very nice.
Trey McBride went to Colorado State.
There you go. We got another guy who went to 2 colleges, so you're gonna have to guess both of them. But another serial number card, Eric All. Now, one's obvious because he's in his Iowa uniform, but where did Eric All go before he went to Iowa?
Michigan. That's
correct. Hey, it's the first defensive player drafted last year. Latu. UCLA.
I have a story. About Latu.
We can tell that. Whoa! Card. Producer River, I think we'll want this one.
Whoa, we got some fire here. We got a Joe Milton auto. We got Producer River. Does he get it? Does he get to keep it?
Yes, this is Producer River's card. We're sending it to him.
You got to get a sleeve and you got to get a top loader for that bad boy. Make sure
absolutely.
How about that? And our first Panini pack on the show.
We got an auto.
We rip a quarterback auto for our lovely producer who's a huge Tennessee fan. River, congratulations. You know what we'll do? We'll overthrow that to you. We'll get it to you, but it might, land in another county. What's that numbered to? That's a serial numbered card.
Yes. We also got a Jared Verse and a Roma Dunze.
Okay, so we got Florida State and we have Washington. I got
and these are awesome. These guys are all in their college uniforms. It's so cool. So PaniniAmerica.net. Go visit. We're going to do this maybe not every day, but we're going to rip packs a lot of days on this show. So Joe Milton autograph. Let's go. Time for the show. Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3. I'm buzzing off that Joe Milton autograph right now.
I couldn't have gone better, honestly. That was great. I had a great time. I love ripping packs, man. It's my favorite thing to do in the entire world.
Oh, Producer River, I cannot wait to overthrow that card to you. It'll be such a pleasure. But
if we send a Joe Milton card in the mail, Andy, do they just mail it to the next county over?
They must. They must. Or the next
or does
state.
It go by airmail?
Well, River's in Tennessee, so it's a skinny parallelogram. There's a lot of states around, so it might end up in Kentucky if we're not careful.
Deliver that into a tight window, and you might airmail it.
All right, enough Joe Milton jokes. Okay. We're actually going to have. Speaking of Tennessee quarterbacks, we're going to bring Nick Roush back on the show for a few minutes tomorrow, just to torture him a little bit. Remember, a couple weeks ago we were trying to talk to him about Kentucky. He decided he wanted to throw a stray at Nico Iamaleava, called him a volleyball player who can't hit the go ball. Nico's going to throw for like 400 yards against Kentucky this weekend, probably, if Kentucky's performance of the last 2 weeks are any indication. So we're gonna torture Nick a little bit on the show tomorrow, but we have much to talk about today because the coaches were all talking Monday, and they had some very interesting things to say. But Ari, we're gonna start with Mario Cristobal because he said something very interesting after the game on Saturday night. But I want to take you back a couple of years. I want to take you back to the post-game press conference after the 2022 Florida State game. Remember, that game was 45-3 Florida State. Miami could not do anything. It was a sad game to watch for the Hurricanes. This is Mario after that game.
Trust me, no one feels this more than I do, but I hate it for our people. I hate it for our fans. I hate it for our players. We're in a building process, and we're laying a foundation and got to go to work, and it ain't fun. And days like this are really painful, and there ain't no excuse, there ain't no sidestepping it or sugarcoating it. So that's why I came here. Got to go to work.
You see him hit that table, Ari?
I did.
That's a theme. Let's go to Mario after Saturday night's resounding win against Florida State. Smacking that table again. Do they own the state?
So I don't know if you read the column yet that I wrote about this that's on 3 right now, but this was my lead. So if you didn't, then we're on the same page, Andy. I used a different quote from that press conference to start off, but I think that that's a really nice way to look at it because after that game 2 years ago when they lost 45-3, Manny Navarro from The Athletic asked him about Florida State running up the score. And I'm sure you've seen this quote, but if you're listening, you might not have heard it. He said that, basically it's Miami's job to stop Florida State and it's Florida State's job to score. He doesn't care about that stuff. And that one day the shoe will be on the other foot, right? Yep. And when he said that, one day could have meant any point in time, right? That's not a specific amount of time, but one day turned out to be 2 years later. And the game was 36-14 on Saturday, but a meaningless touchdown at the end of the game for Florida State made the score look a little bit more respectable than the game actually was. And, it's an interesting situation because now Miami is 4-0 against teams in the state. Obviously the two big ones were the blowout of Florida in the opener. And then of course, what happened to Florida State then. And I think that there is a clear identifiable growth within the program that Miami has had that, is clear. Now, I don't know how much of the 4-0 stuff matters when the two teams you beat are having really rough years, but you live in that state. You know how much it matters to the recruits in South Florida that Miami has on the up and up. So I don't know, Andy, how far Miami's season's going to actually go this year. I do worry about their defense. I don't know that I think that they're a legitimate going to win the national championship team right now. If they won it all, it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world, but I think that would be a pretty big long shot at the moment. But what I do know is that if you are looking at the year-over-year returns and growth of having Mario Cristobal as your coach, that being 8-0 right now and smacking Florida and Florida State is a really important, metric to track that. Now, here's the other thing too. I think that we can say without a shadow of a doubt that Mario Cristobal has been the most successful of the big three Florida programs at talent accumulation, right? Like Miami has collected players better than Florida and Florida State. Now, Florida State did it really well a few years ago in the portal and maybe did the best job any team has done in the portal during the portal era at all. But in terms of year-over-year consistent program roster building, Mario Cristobal is the best.
And Billy Napier has gotten a great quarterback and has gotten some good high school signees. He's not done as good a job out of the portal, with maybe the exception of Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, and also too, like, it's the lines at Miami. Like, they're not just recruiting sexy skill position players.
And that's what they're doing mostly out of high school. Yes, with some supplementation out of the portal.
In the 2 recruiting cycles since Miami's 42-point loss to Florida State 2 years ago, the Hurricanes have signed a recruiting class out of high school that ranked number 8 in 2023 and number 5 in 2024. They're currently number 10. And also at the game, there were more than 50 recruits, Andy, more than 50, including 4-star cornerback Ben Hanks of Booker T. Washington. He's a Florida commit. 4-star linebacker TJ.
He's also a Florida legacy. Ben Hanks, his dad, played linebacker at Florida.
TJ Alford of Penn State Lucy is an Ohio State commit. 4-star defensive lineman Jarquez Carter of Newberry High, also an Ohio State commit, and 3-star cornerback commit Shamar Arnox of Carrollton, Georgia High School. Like, he's a USC commit. They are like going to go on a flipping spree, I think. And they also got another commitment from a player that decommitted earlier in the month, and Malachi Toney out of Fort Lauderdale American Heritage, a school that I've actually visited, writing about Torrance Gibson. How's that for a blast in the past?
I remember Torrance Gibson. Heck yeah.
Yeah, I went there. And there was a former 49er player as the head coach at the time, and his name is escaping me at the moment. But,
I had ribs with Torrance Gibson at Mama Lucy's in Opelika after a 7-on-7 tournament.
You did?
Oh, yeah, when he was in high school.
Yeah, he was a nice guy. Yeah. And then if you go look at like Florida and Florida State, their classes are nothing right now. Like, it's just not comparable. Like Miami, I guess Florida State's 23, which isn't terrible, but it's not Florida State quality. And Florida is 33. And I think that part of the reason why is because Florida State's obviously having a really awful season, like truly awful.
And Florida, the recruits are waiting to see what happens with the coaching situation. Like, they want some clarity on that.
That's the hardest part. It's like, if a coach is on the hot seat, he can't recruit effectively, but then you hold the lack of recruiting against him because he's in a situation that he can't win in. So I feel for Billy Napier in that regard. But in terms of the word that he used in the post game, trajectory, whose trajectory are you buying of the 3 right now? Now, that could change in the snap of a finger with the right hire, but like at the moment.
Matt's in the chat, apparently doesn't watch games. Y'all, the state is down all schools, and UCF is better than all of them but Miami. Miami has no D. Matt doesn't watch games. Like, UCF played Florida, and it wasn't really close. Florida won, and Florida's not that good. So, and UCF just fired their defensive coordinator, so really shouldn't be throwing stones at other teams' defenses. Also in the chat, give Alex Golish some talent and see what he does on offense. No, it's kind of Alex Golish's job to go get the talent, which is what Mario Cristobal has done. Now, this can change at the snap of a finger, because we started this segment with Mario Cristobal 2 years ago lamenting a blowout loss to Florida State. So Mike Norvell was the king of the state then. He was the king of the state last year, and now he is presiding over a dumpster fire. So it can change that quickly. For Mario Cristobal, they lose Cam Ward after this year. They've got to make sure they have a quarterback either from the portal or one they've developed out of high school. You know, it might be Emory Williams, who they liked, and then he broke his arm against Florida State last year. But they've got to have that part figured out. But what I like that they have done, and this is what Mario did at Oregon too, is they have built from the inside out. If you can't block, you can't win. And they have brought in guys who can block. If you don't have a D-line that can reset the line of scrimmage, you can't win. And they have brought in those guys. And the other thing is, that type of team construction will work when you play teams from the SEC and the Big Ten in the playoff.
Yeah. And I think what you said is a really good point, Andy, about, trajectory and program building. Like, Florida State a year ago was undefeated and got screwed out of a playoff spot. Like, Mario Cristobal is not making that message to brag that they won the game. Mario Cristobal knew that there were 50 recruits there. He knew a bunch of other recruits would be watching. I think that recruiting in Florida, especially in South Florida, is a very front runner situation, where kids from that area want Miami to be back before they take them seriously. And he knows that this isn't a 1-year proposition. Like, he's not at Miami to create a good season. He's there to create a good program. And, I know that we came into the year worrying about his coaching chops in terms of his game day management, but so far this year it's been pretty good. And his team has gotten a lot better. And I think the focus of this program isn't just about being pretty good right now. It's about signing really good classes year over year, becoming a cool proposition to kids in Florida again, actually doing what every coach and his predecessors wanted to do, which is keeping top kids from Miami home. And that's how the U gets back. I think the U getting back is more complex than Texas getting back. Like, Texas was always about just getting good again. But I think the U is back when everybody in South Florida is like rocking with the Hurricanes. And like, people are like, I want to go there. Kids grow up dreaming of going there.
They haven't been cool
in 20 years.
During the lives of these guys who are recruits now.
And so I think that this season, though Miami fans are still enjoying it and living it, is about trying to see how far this team can go. But I think the season's goal, which was to show that this team can actually be good and not a laughing stock, has already been accomplished. Like, Miami is already a team that's on the way up. And Mario Cristobal is a coach that you have to take seriously in the recruiting trail, which then I think will breed more talent, more dividends on that talent. And then maybe one day they won't need Cam Ward, or they won't need to rely on Cam Ward as much as they do this year, because their roster will be so excellent. Like, that's the building process.
Well, but the thing is, they're good at getting guys out of the portal.
Yeah.
Like, the guys they've chosen, like Cam Ward, Damian Martinez, the older Maui Noah brother who they got last year, with the younger Maui Noah brother signing out of high school. Like, they've done a really good job selecting guys out of the portal to complement the guys they've gotten out of high school. Like, that's the job now.
And they'll still do it. They'll still do that.
Yeah. That's part of
one day their roster will be
deal.
so good, Andy, that they're not going to be living and dying every single snap of every single game based on how good Cam Ward plays. That's my only point. They're still going to go get Cam Ward. I wasn't saying they're not going to try to go get him, but like, how much of Miami's success this year is Cam Ward? And that percentage is probably too high because they're still building. But there's a lot of really good players in that state. And guess what? There's the number one thing that's also not talked about that much, but like, Nick Saban is not there to go raid the state.
To go
now, LSU
to take the best wide receiver out of state. Think about how many times he took the best wide receiver out of South Florida. Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
Jalen Waddle.
There's a lot of them.
Or no, Jalen Waddle from Texas. Sorry. He plays in South Florida now for the Dolphins. And of course, Ohio State went and grabbed Jeremiah Smith out of Broward County.
And like,
this past
Jeremiah
year.
Smith have gone to Ohio State if Miami went 10-2 and 10-2 the previous 2 years? Maybe he still would have, because he wanted to be developed by it. I don't know. But like, he was thinking about Miami at the end there, right? You think about him a little bit more if they're actually proven to be on the right track, probably, and they are. And I think I wrote a story about this at The Athletic 2 or 3 years ago, but if you go actually crunch the numbers of how many top 100 players Nick Saban took from the state of Florida, not just South Florida, but the entire state, I think you could, like, with a straight face, attribute that the demise of the big three in Florida is directly his fault or his doing. Like, it's like, Kirby maybe Smart, that sounds dramatic, but
Kirby Smart's not helping either. Like, Jalen Carter from
Ohio State.
Yeah. So,
but I'm saying if Alabama,
Carson Beck's from Jacksonville,
I think he took like 15 or 16, 17 in a 4-year period, top 100 players. That's a lot of talent that's not playing in Florida. And then you add into what Ohio State and Georgia are taking, and then LSU and Texas and all the other, like, there's a lot of talent leaving the state. There's enough talent in the state to make all three teams really good. But I think that there should always be one really good team out of the three, right? If not two. Yep. It shouldn't be they all stink, because that means that something's going wrong in recruiting. And Mario Cristobal, from what I can see, is the only coach right now that's actually doing the high school piece seriously enough to make them good. And whoever is coaching at Florida State, and it's been a criticism in the first column or the second column I wrote at On3 was about how Norvell can't just win in the portal. You might have a good season, but you can't build a program around that. You can't be transactional. Mario Cristobal is going to be transactional for 3 or 10% of it, and 90% of it's going to be foundational, rock solid Florida recruiting. And then watch. That's important.
Well, and meanwhile, I don't know if Billy Napier could save his job. It's going to be very hard. If he does, let's say by some miracle he does, he has to be more transactional. Like he's got to be quicker and better in the portal because that's where they've failed. So yeah, it's Mario Cristobal has balanced them both. He and Napier came in at exactly the same time, and he's ahead. Now, if Napier could beat Georgia and Texas in the next 2 weeks, we would change our minds on that. But that I don't know that that's going to happen. Miami, meanwhile, plays Duke this weekend. Duke pushed SMU to the brink, took them to overtime last week, could not beat them in overtime. But that's your upset watch. Miami's a 20.5-point favorite. I don't think Mario Cristobal cares about the spread as long as they get the W. But Miami has the cleanest path to 12-0 of any of the teams that are still undefeated right now. So we'll see what they can do. But that is it's a pretty definitive statement from him after that Florida State game. And now they can move their way to 9-0, 10-0, 11-0, 12-0, and then go to Charlotte. Ari, got a big game tonight in Sunbelt. If you're playing PrizePicks, and if you're not, what the hell are you even doing? Download that PrizePicks app. Use the code Staples. Play $5. Get $50 instantly. There's a game tonight. You've got the Texas State Bobcats against Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Huge game in the Sunbelt. Maybe you want to look at Jordan McLeod. His square is 254.5 passing yards. Do you think he'll throw for more or less than that? He has thrown for more than that in 3 of his last 5 games. Against ODU, he only threw for 173. Will he light it up against what might be the best team in the Sun Belt, the Louisiana Raging Cajuns? Also, they're already starting to populate the board for the weekend. We got a couple Ohio State squares for that Ohio State-Penn State matchup. Will Howard, 224.5 passing yards. He has eclipsed that in 3 of his past 5 games. Did not do it against Nebraska, came in just below against Nebraska. But will he throw for more than that? Also, you got Jeremiah Smith. What is Jeremiah Smith going to do in this game? 67.5 receiving yards. He has eclipsed that 5 of the past 5 games. But this is probably the best defense they will have played. So what's going to happen? Download the PrizePicks app, play $5, get $50 instantly. You start looking at the board for this weekend right now. Ari, not on the board for PrizePicks right now, and with good reason. Who's going to play quarterback for Penn State? Because we don't know that. Now, James Franklin got asked about that on Monday, and this was his answer, which I thought was somewhat telling.
Yeah, I think he's played enough football for us that timeline will go all the way up to the game, really. I do think from a practice perspective, we're going to have to, no matter where we're at on Tuesday, we're going to have to get both of those guys reps, Tuesday and Wednesday. But it's too early to tell at this point. But he's played enough football that I think that decision will go all the way up to game time. But the reality is we're going to have both guys ready, and you could even make the argument all 3 guys ready, which is challenging to do in a game week, is to try to get all those guys ready. So have had some conversations with Danny and Andy about that already. We'll continue to have conversations about it, but I do think Drew has played enough football that it'll go all the way up to game time until we make that decision. Yes, sir.
So he's talking about Drew Aller, the starting quarterback who got hurt against Wisconsin last week, came out at the end of the first half, did not come back in. Bo Pribula, the backup, played the second half, Ari. And what James Franklin is saying is Drew Aller has played enough that if he doesn't take first-team reps at practice this week, but does feel good going into Saturday, that they're comfortable starting him. So are you building your whole game plan around Bo Pribula because he's taken most of the reps in practice, probably at least early in the week? What are you doing if you're Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator there?
Well, the one thing that I think we have to also mention about this, Andy, that we didn't on the show on Monday, is that Andy Kotelnicki has a lot of practice with this because Jalen
Mhm.
Daniels got injured a lot at Kansas.
And Jason
like,
Bean would come
Jason
in.
Bean would come in and not just come in. Like, he was awesome sometimes.
Now,
Like,
the thing about Jason Bean and Jalen Daniels is they're fairly similar in skill set, whereas Drew Aller and Bo Pribula are pretty different.
Yeah, but he's not in a position right now where it's like, oh no, our quarterback got injured. Like, what do we do? Like, I think that like reps in that regard probably help. But that's interesting because from a coaching standpoint, Andy, like, what do? If the game plan is completely different, do you install the new game plan around Bo Pribula? And then if Drew Aller can play, you just revert back to what you always did, which seems like a losing recipe to me. Or what's the coaching anecdote for this situation?
It's a good question because the other part of what Franklin was saying about Drew's played enough football is they've practiced enough for enough games with Drew as a starting quarterback that if you go back to the plays that Drew is good at running, there's enough reps for all of the starters on the offensive line and the receivers and the backs to know exactly what they're doing. So you're not really hurting yourself there in terms of preparation. They're prepared for that. Does it mean if Drew plays and he's ready to go and he's throwing effectively and playing effectively that you now have some little wrinkles you can throw in there with Pribula? Because remember, they were still playing Pribula on occasion anyway, which, by the way, similar to what Andy Kotelnicki did at Kansas, where when Jalen Daniels was healthy, there would be Jason Bean plays, and sometimes Jalen Daniels and Jason Bean plays.
You know, we've seen a lot of situations this year, Andy, where a quarterback plays the first half or whatever, then gets injured, and then a quarterback with a different style comes into the game and then like just takes it over. Can you remember one from this past weekend where that happened?
Yeah, Texas A&M, LSU. And Brian Kelly, it's interesting. Brian Kelly was on Feinbaum yesterday and talking about that. And I was shocked at what he admitted because he's like, yeah, we tried to go back to some of the stuff we did in the Arkansas game to stop Taylon Green. And it just, it didn't really work. And I'm like, Marcel Reed started 3 games for these guys. You didn't prepare for the possibility during the week that might happen and he might come in.
And I think Ohio State's probably in a better scenario because they have to prepare all week for his game plan. Like, they know going into it. It's not like Drew Aller plays 2 bad quarters and they bring him in and then they start running all over the place. And also, too, I don't know if this is just perception and I could be wrong about this, but like Marcel Reed is much faster, right? Like, and a much more dynamic athlete than even Taylor Green, right?
No, Taylon Green, yes, Marcel Reed is faster, and they're a very like the way Arkansas runs Taylon Green and the way Arkansas runs Marcel, or the way A&M runs Marcel Reed are completely different. Yeah. The plays are completely different. The blocking styles are different. Like, so to say we just tried to go back to some of the principles that we had when we faced a running quarterback like that, no, because you didn't face the same kind of running quarterback.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know if, and you tell me this, but I mean, I guess this is a different scenario because A&M did play Reed a lot, and like Wegman has not always looked great this year.
I mean, Reed started 3 games. You have to, like, I'm sure Shane Beamer this week, even though we're assuming Reed's going to start, I'm sure Shane Beamer and company at South Carolina are preparing in case they see Connor Wegman. Because you have to, because they both started the same number of games.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. It's like you can't get caught with your pants down in a game that is going to maybe decide the SEC championship game berth. So, I'm with you on that.
So, but Jim Knowles is going to be preparing for both. Like, now they know. What I am curious about is, obviously, they've seen Pribula in the small doses. They saw him running the offense for a half, which I think gives you a good picture of what he can do. But this gives Andy Kotelnicki the opportunity to go in the lab for a few days and really come up with something. And I think that's something James Franklin also addressed, which I find fascinating.
I think as a defense, it's difficult because I think when you're preparing for Drew, and Bo will have his few plays that we sprinkle in there per quarter. That's difficult, but when the kind of the game plan flips, right, and Bo's in there, it changes it dramatically, I think, for the defense, and that is difficult. Most people aren't built like that, right? Your quarterbacks are all similar type guys, and ours are very different in a lot of ways. I don't think we're in a situation where the offense totally changes. But what's nice about us, and it was a big reason in bringing Andy here, is we do enough things and we have enough diversity within our playbook that we are able to focus on the strengths of the players that are in there. And that's all I really did on Saturday, was just remind Andy of that, because this was a little bit of a problem in the past in practice and in games, that you really should strategically call the game differently now with Bo in the game, and just reminding Andy of that. Let's call this game playing to Bo's strengths.
So that video, by the way, courtesy of our friends at Blue White Illustrated, that's on 3's Penn State site, which great coverage of the Nittany Lions, by the way, from Sean Fitz and Greg Pickel, Thomas Frank Carr. So that's a message to Jim Knowles. That wasn't a message to Andy Kotelnicki in the office. That's a message to Jim Knowles, like, hey, please spend all week practicing God knows what, because we're gonna, even if we're not gonna do anything different, we're gonna make you think we are.
Yeah, no, it's all gamesmanship. But Andy, I know we're gonna spend a lot of time this week discussing whether or not Drew Aller or Bo Pribula are gonna play. Like, don't you think the likely scenario here is that they both will?
Yeah. No, I think there's a chance Drew Aller doesn't play if his injury is bad enough.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, if he can't go, but I'm saying if he can go, I still think Bo will play.
You're going to see Bo Pribula because you would have seen him anyway. They are always sprinkling him in, but now they might have, and it may be that he just showed in the game last week that he needs to be sprinkled in more.
Yeah. And I know that people have concerns about his passing acumen. And, at the beginning of his playing time against Wisconsin, there were a few balls where you're like, oh boy, that's not going to work. And then I thought he settled down and did a really good job of, making some plays through the air. And, he's fast, athletic, and gives you a different look. It's very hard to prepare for somebody who is a pass first guy and somebody who's as gifted as a runner who can also throw a little bit. So I think that Penn State does have, usually an injury to your starting quarterback. It's like, oh God, this is terrible timing. And, nobody wants to watch this game if they don't feel like both teams are full strength. But I think this might actually work out in Penn State's advantage.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch. One other note about this game. So Arvell Reese, the linebacker for Ohio State, he got tossed for targeting at the end of the Nebraska game. The Big Ten has overturned that targeting call, and he will be able to play in the first half of this game. So that is going to be, a help for Ohio State, adds to their depth, that they will not be without him. And that call was, if you saw it, you were like, I don't know about that. And the Big Ten agreed. So it's been lifted. He can play.
That's the play that made Ryan Day fake throw his headset.
Yes, he did not actually throw it. It stayed in his hand. It's sort of like when Nick Saban almost threw his headset after Tua took the sack on first down in overtime against Georgia. Probably glad he didn't, because then he could hear the play call on 2nd and 26 for the touchdown. Ryan Day,
if you throw the headset, if you let go of the headset, and the headset hits the ground, is that a penalty?
I don't know that that's
is that
penalty.
The thing that caused him to not get penalized on that situation? Because he could have gotten a penalty.
No, they can throw a flag for whatever they want. If he said,
I know, I'm just saying,
like,
I'm asking you if you think if he would have spiked his headset instead of pumping it, if the refs would have thrown the flag.
I think it's one of those, they didn't want to add 15 more yards in that situation. Those of you who've seen Bull Durham, the one thing you can't say to the umpire, like if he'd said that to one of the officials, they probably would have flagged him for 15 yards. But just acting like you're throwing your headset, even throwing your headset. I mean, shoot, Steve Spurrier threw his visor all the time. He didn't get penalized for it most of the time. So it's, I think that was the case of the officials in that situation, because they're already like Ohio State already just had a penalty that resulted in a first down.
Yeah.
And Nebraska getting a new set of downs. Like, they're not going to give them another 15 yards for something that they might consider ticky-tack. It was a sideline. They ended up giving him a sideline warning instead of calling an unsportsmanlike conduct on him.
I know that this is an annual conversation, Andy, but I think at some point, like, we just have to ask, like, what is targeting, and like, what is the fix to this? Because like, there has to be a distinction between lowering your helmet and hitting a defenseless player and just playing hard-nosed football. Like,
and also the offensive player, like the ball carriers, always lower their helmet. If lowering your helmet and leading with the crown of your helmet gets a defensive player thrown out, why doesn't it get an offensive player thrown out? It seems like a double standard, because remember, that rule is to protect the person who lowers their head. It's not to protect the person who's getting hit. Like, that's the key. Because if you lower your head, you risk breaking your neck.
I'll make an admission, because I'm just a man of the people here, Andy, but we've seen a lot of targeting calls this year. There was one at the end of the Miami. Who did they almost lose to? A few weeks ago before the
Cal. It was the Cal game.
Yeah. Cal game. Yeah, that's right. During the comeback. And then there was this one in the Ohio State game that could have, Nebraska could have won that game. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. They literally could have won. And I am watching it. And a lot of times, like, as a person who watches college football all day, every day, sometimes don't know if it is or not. Like, like, to me, it's like, when you were watching the Nebraska Ohio State game, like, everybody on Twitter was like, oh yeah, that's 100% targeting. And it's like, why? It was an arm bar. The guy had the football. They actually ruled a fumble, which means you can't be defenseless, I think, if you have the ball in your hands. Isn't that correct?
Right. The ball carrier is not in a defenseless position.
So, like, how, if you rule, like, I thought it was weird in the call that they ruled the play a fumble that Ohio State recovered, but the person who caused the fumble got flagged for targeting, which then gave them the first down. Like, that was a very confusing set of circumstances for me. And I'm not saying they got it wrong. I mean, I guess they admitted that they did, but it felt like something's off here. And like, I just don't even know what it is half the time. It's like, okay, if you have a person who lowers their helmet and they hit somebody,
all you need to know is
obvious.
When the announcers say, well, that's definitely targeting, and then the officiating expert, Bill Lamonier or whoever it is, comes on and says, well, no, it's not. And then the official's like, yeah, it is, or vice versa. Like, nobody knows.
Yeah.
A more clear standard that is applied evenly. Because I agree with the intent of the rule. I heard Steve Shaw, the director of officials for the country, for the whole country, talking about this last week in a video that he did. If you look at the number of targeting penalties that are being called, it's actually pretty low, which means those hits have been taken out of the game, which means the rule has served its purpose for the most part.
Yeah.
You don't have as much head hunting anymore. But they've got to find a way to apply it evenly.
Well, here's what they need to do, in my opinion. I think they need to call targeting for one specific thing, which is lowering the crown of your helmet. And then everything else is unnecessary roughness at the ref's discretion. Like, if they did not lower their helmet and spearhead the person, then...
Which is interesting, because, like, spearing was against the rules, like, since the 80s. So it's not new. And it's like, you're right. They could do it that way.
A receiver who is going up to catch a pass across the middle, and then a defensive back launches his body and hits you in the chest with his shoulder pad, and it is just a unnecessary play, then that is unnecessary roughness. But I think the problem with targeting is that there are 9 different things seemingly that cause you to think it's targeting, and we're not very clear. It's like, did you launch your body? Did you use the crown of your helmet? Did you hit them when they were indefensible? Like, there's too many things that fall under the umbrella of targeting. Yeah. Targeting should be if you lower your head. Like, anytime anybody gets lit up, it's just targeting. And it's like, can anybody actually deliver
you're still
a big
allowed
hit
to hit people
cleanly?
hard? Yeah. I saw one. I'm trying to remember the game. It was on Saturday, and I apologize for not remembering the game. It was just a really great hit. A really great, clean hit. Shoulder pad to the chest. Like, there might have been snot bubbles. I don't know. But it was clean. And the first thought, like, the announcers immediately go to, was that targeting? Like, no. And they did. They showed the replay. And they're like, nope, clean hit. and the officials didn't call it, and it was great. But you're right.
And I heard Tom Brady talking about this, Andy, and I don't know if college players are. And I'm sorry for hijacking the conversation. I do this a lot, and it's a flaw of mine. But I think this is interesting, and I think people care about this. Tom Brady said that, like, because you go and you watch NFL films, right? You know that dun 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 dun.
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah, absolutely.
And you like go back and like just watch highlights from 2004. Like it used to be the quarterback's responsibility to not let his players get let out to dry like that. Like part of playing good defense in football back in the day was you're not throwing over the middle because the safety is going to light up your dude if you do it. Like not even the hit, it's the prospect of the hit, right? And if a quarterback sees that a big hit is coming, that was a form of coverage, even if you weren't on top of the receiver. And like I think there was something to that I like. Like I miss the fact that if you throw a bad pass or you are desperate to complete a pass and you hang your receiver out to dry, that they would get lit up as a form of punishment for being in that situation.
It's called a hospital ball. Yeah, they call it a hospital ball.
And quarterbacks should be taught not to throw them. Like that, honestly, because now it's like you throw hospital balls all the time because you're not allowed to hit the player, and it makes playing defense harder. So it's like on one hand, I 1000% agree with the reason why targeting exists. I'm not saying they should remove it from the game completely. These are kids, and ultimately the most important thing with football is, the safety of it. I get it. I understand it.
Right. You want the game to continue because you don't have because if you have too many of those hits, parents will not let their kids play anymore. Like I'm a parent of a football player, of a high school football player. Like I think about this stuff all the time. Like I think about, well, should I ask him to wear his Guardian cap during the game? Because he wears it at practice, but he doesn't wear it during the game. Like I think about this stuff all the time. I watched two of his teammates, two brothers, one dislocated his ankle and one broke his elbow within like 10 plays of one another the other night. It was awful. And so like that's the stuff you're thinking about. And so anything that takes the possibility of a catastrophic head injury out, I'm all for, because I love the game. I love what it teaches people. I love watching it. Obviously, I've built a career around talking about it. I want them to not have that stuff in the game because I want parents to feel comfortable putting their kids in the sport so that it keeps going. But
I also don't want teams to lose because somebody hit the other player hard.
I agree. At some point, you've got to draw a line, and they've got to figure it out. They have to figure out a way to apply it more evenly because we've seen too many games get swung on it where 3 different people looked at the same thing and saw something different. Like it needs to be easier to diagnose. So we'll find out. But the
NFL has actually cracked down. Like I watch a lot of NFL. And like there doesn't really seem to be as many tic-tac bullcrap you breathe on the quarterback penalties. Like they had a problem where any single time anybody hit a quarterback.
Oh, I saw one the other day. They did a full weight penalty, which I hate. Like you sacked the quarterback too hard. Like you succeeded as a defense, got to the quarterback and sacked him, but you hit him too hard. Like they don't have that in college yet, and thank God they don't.
Yeah. But I don't know. We're not in charge of this, Andy. I think what you said is the main takeaway here, which is you have to have the penalty to maintain safety and all the things that go around, keeping safety. But you have to find something that is easy and simple and clear for everybody to diagnose. You can't have the rules analyst disagreeing with the ref that's disagreeing with the analyst. It's like nobody knows. And that's the hardest part. That is the ultimate form of grab ass.
Exactly. Speaking of grabbing, you like that segue?
It's just literally go anywhere.
Busy mornings, late nights, working through lunch. Life does not always have room for a complete balanced meal. Like today, I've been very busy. I had to drop the kids off at school. I had to pick up a retainer for one of my kids. I had to get a workout in before the show because there's too much work to do after the show to do that. What are you going to do about breakfast? Well, I know what I'm going to do. I've got Huel. I've got the Black Edition chocolate flavor, 35 grams of protein, 400 calories. I know exactly what's in it, 27 vitamins and minerals. It's a complete balanced meal. So that's Huel, Huel. It is the world's #1 complete nutrition brand. Complete meal in seconds. Just grab, sip, and go. In fact, I am going to have my breakfast while Ari is pontificating on this next topic. Like when he's going on a long soliloquy, I will be drinking my breakfast, and it's going to be amazing, and it's going to be complete, and I'm going to be full, and I'm going to know exactly what I'm putting in my body. Huel makes it easy with nutrition that fits into your life. You can try it now with 15% off your order with the code STAPLES at Huel.com. That's Huel.com. Fuel up the easy way with Huel. Ari, Lane Kiffin said something interesting on Monday.
Really?
I know what you're thinking. Lane Kiffin said something interesting. What a shock. So the SEC is better about this now than it used to be, because it used to be your game could be anytime. It could start anytime between noon Eastern and 8 Eastern. And they didn't tell you until 11 days before, or sometimes even 6 days before. Now they're a little bit better about that. They'll tell you when you got a noon game, and then they'll say, okay, you're either 3:30, 4:15, 7, 7:30, 8 o'clock. Like they're a lot better about it. But Lane was not happy because he just found out that Ole Miss is not going to have a single night game at home this year.
Announced November 9th kickoffs, 2:30 for y'all against Georgia. So you got 2 morning, 2 afternoon kicks left. From your perspective or coaching perspective, is there any advantage at all to playing day to night kickoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's proven over time in NFL and college. Playing at night in electric atmospheres is a home field advantage, and tough when you got to do that as a opposing team. So that's been proven for a long time. And so who won at night? LSU gets to play at night again, I guess. Shocker. So that's 2 for 2 for them. It is an advantage. I feel bad for our fans, to not have one night conference game is really unfortunate for them. And so whatever. It's just really disappointing, but it is what it is.
Is it that disappointing? Like the idea of LSU getting a night game, and that's the Alabama LSU game, by the way. Like maybe you should have beaten LSU when you had the chance, and your game against Georgia would be the night game, because Alabama LSU at night is a playoff elimination game. Like unless Georgia somehow loses to Florida, Ole Miss Georgia is not going to be an elimination game for both teams. So the stakes are higher in Alabama LSU. Also, which blimp shot looks better to you at night, Ari? Tiger Stadium with its 100,000 people, or Vaught Hemingway Stadium with its 60,000 people?
Yeah, the thing that is, like, I'm not that fired up about this because, like, Lane makes me laugh. He's a shocker. Like, that's how I talk when I'm in confrontations with people I know. Is that, like, it's kind of not in your control, but it kind of is in your control. Like, you can't make your stadium bigger, but you can make it louder and the games in it bigger, right? Like,
yeah. If you beat LSU, this game is bigger, but you lost LSU,
like,
and that's on you.
And also, too, I thought it was kind of funny that, like, Ole Miss just lost at night on the road. Like, they don't just get it at home. They're literally 3 days or 2 days removed from when he said that to losing in a night atmosphere in one of the loudest stadiums in the country. And the reason why they're playing
LSU did.
LSU, like, he's making fun of
Yeah.
LSU for getting all the home games at night. And it's like they literally just went on the road and lost at night 2 days ago. So the thing is that Ole Miss, though I saw a graphic, I don't know how people do these like mathematical likelihoods of making the playoff. Like, is it the same thing as like
they don't know, because there's human beings that haven't met yet that will actually decide it.
I just don't understand how that's even calculated. But this is a bad at math podcast.
Yeah.
But I saw 20% for Ole Miss, which is funny because, like, if they win the rest of their games, they actually have a chance to make it still. So, they have to, take care of business. But Ole Miss is not the team. I mean, God, look at the schedule. They really should have made it this year if they were the team that we thought they were, and they just aren't. So, like, I wouldn't be complaining about the night situation. I'd be looking in the mirror here, I think.
Well, that I don't think we're going to get that, because that would require Lane to say something to the tune of, well, we shouldn't have lost to Ole Miss then. But it's easier to complain about the SEC than say we shouldn't have lost to Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, because viewership.
I mean, shouldn't have lost to LSU. Sorry, shouldn't have lost to LSU. I'm getting what he should have said wrong. So
yeah, or Kentucky for that matter.
Yeah, see, that's even worse now seeing Kentucky. And I realize Kentucky's probably a different team than the one that played Ole Miss, because the Kentucky team that played Ole Miss had just kind of pushed Georgia to the brink as well. But
if they wouldn't have lost to Kentucky, which isn't a big ask here, Andy, for what they spent on the roster. It's not. We're not asking them to have beaten Georgia. They would have been a one-loss team likely. We don't know what's going to happen at Arkansas. I think they'll win that game, but they would likely have been a one-loss team hosting Georgia on November 9th. And in that situation, as a one-loss team, I think they would have had a very good chance of that being a night game.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I do feel bad for Ole Miss. Like, everybody should get because SEC fans love night games. They're not like, remember the old Pac-12? They would complain about night games. And they'd be like, oh, we can't play at night. The SEC fans die for night games. They love night games.
Who complained about
I would like every fan base to be able to get a night game or two. But the TV wants what it wants. They want that blimp shot of 100,000 people. And if you're the SEC team with a 60,000 seat stadium, you're kind of going to get what you get.
Andy, you know where feelings don't matter?
In the ratings book?
In capitalism.
Yeah, it's true.
Nobody cares if Ole Miss's feelings are hurt. They want to print money. That's it. Go be good. Then print money. You can help them print money. Everything goes out the window. Every social situation in the entire world goes out the window if you can make somebody money. Have you noticed that?
It's funny how that works, right?
Yeah.
It's funny how the rules are different from people who earn more or people who earn more for their company. It's just it's amazing. It's almost like Alabama and LSU earn more for ESPN and the SEC than Ole Miss does. I don't know. Crazy.
The ROI on the roster at Ole Miss is not. That's not how you drew it up. That's all.
No. And you're right. Shouldn't have lost to Kentucky. Shouldn't have lost to LSU. It really comes down to that. Okay. Let's talk about JLab, Ari. Finest audio out there. Also, they're teaming up with college athletes like Travis Hunter from Colorado, which we're about to talk about, Ohio State's Will Howard and Quinshon Judkins, and these football stars embody JLab's core values of innovation, performance, and excellence. Just as JLab pushes the boundaries of audio tech, these athletes redefine their sport with skill and dedication. Whether you're traveling to watch your favorite team or streaming the game on your mobile device, JLab has you covered. Find the blue box at retailers near you or visit JLab.com. That is JLab.com. All right. Speaking of Travis Hunter, let's talk about Travis Hunter's coach, because Stephen A. Smith had an interesting comment on First Take. And he said, essentially, that Texas A&M should have hired Coach Prime, that Alabama should have considered Coach Prime, and that Florida State, Coach Prime's alma mater, should hire Coach Prime. And I thought this was interesting. Now, I know how you feel about this, because you feel like he does not recruit the way one must recruit to win at those places. I'm actually starting to question that a little bit as I watch Colorado improve every week.
Hey, you know that Ace Ventura? He sucks up all the air before he goes on the Roger Podactor. Okay, I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here. I don't know if it's a rant. I'm going to be calm. So Deion Sanders' lack of high school recruiting is turning out to not matter in the short term, right? Like, Colorado is much better this year than I thought they were going to be. I think most people thought they were going to be worse than this. So the fact that he was able to flip his roster, like, Colorado might have a better offensive line right now than Ohio State, dude. Like they have done something in the portal to improve this program, no question, right? But my thing with high school recruiting was a two-pronged issue, which is, one, if you don't build your roster in a healthy way, it's hard to flip it in 2 years and create any sort of sustainability. Now, Deion Sanders probably would be great in the portal every year because he's freaking Deion Sanders. But the second part of the second prong is that if you don't recruit high schools, to me, that sends a message that you don't plan to be there very long. Because I feel like no coach would probably prefer to start over from ground zero every year, right? Like you want to have some familiarity, some players on your roster that you're developing so that by year 3, 4, and 5, your team is much better than in year 1 and 2. Is that a fair thing?
Here's the thing, Art. Well, here's the thing. Because the reason I'm questioning this was I'm starting to question whether we know exactly how this is going to look in the coming years. Now, I think there's a point where you get to where maybe it's collectively bargained, maybe there's contracts, maybe there is some security and some continuity. But I do know, like, there are major coaches who've built their programs through high school recruiting who have just told their staffs, like starting this offseason, forget continuity. Continuity is over. It's going to be like the NFL. We're going to have a radically different roster every year. Get used to it. Get over it. Maybe Deion was just a little ahead of the curve on this. And I know because I
you
said you can't do it this way.
You should write that if you think that.
It won't work this way. I kept saying it won't work this way. You got to do it this other way. And the Colorado fans pushed back on me. The Deion fans pushed back on me. And they said, no, he's got a plan. And you'll see it'll work. Well, right now they're right. It is working because they're getting better. And I will say, because I always say you got to build on the line of scrimmage through high school. Like you need to be signing 4 and 5 high school offensive linemen a year. It's the Oklahoma conversation we had a few weeks ago. Now, who did he sign out of high school? This past cycle, the number 1 offensive tackle, Jordan Seaton, who is playing well and getting better every week. So I don't know, maybe he's got a better handle on this than we do.
Okay. I just don't know that I'm ever going to buy into the notion that high school recruiting is dead. So, like, if
I'm not saying it's dead.
Yeah.
I'm saying he's doing some of it. He's got the best high school offensive tackle from last year who is playing well for them now.
It's one 5-star player to commit to Colorado every year.
Right. But what if he gets more? What if he gets more?
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I want. I want him to get more. I want him to try to get more.
But
he's not trying to get more.
I think he may be able to get more than that without doing the things you think he has to do.
Well, that'll be interesting. So this is an
because remember they don't have a lot of they don't have a ton of NIL money either, but revenue sharing is coming, so they're going to have a budget. And I've talked about this with Clemson. I've talked about this with schools like Wake Forest. Like the schools that did not have a ton of NIL money are now going to have a budget of some kind. They're going to be able to compete for the ones they really want to compete for. And like, not an offensive lineman, but Julian Lewis. We talked about him a ton because he's committed to USC. Colorado and Indiana still recruiting him. Julian Lewis was on campus at Colorado for the Cincinnati game. Like they're clearly still working on him. So I don't know if this would work at an Alabama.
Well, let me
or Texas A&M, but it could work at Colorado.
Okay. So Big Cat said that Florida State has a magic bullet. Stephen A. Smith's tweeting this. I think a lot of people think that Florida State, because this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about whether or not he can win 9 games in Colorado. We're talking about
Norvell has a $70 million buyout.
Okay, but let's pretend he had a $5 buyout and that I could pay it. What's the number one concern at Florida State right now?
Quarterback.
No, but what's the number one concern about the way the roster is constructed? Is it that
they
they're
don't
too transactional and they have no continuity? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now you want to take that and put it there? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Because it's a lot easier to be, and I'm not like, listen, it's like hard.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, Ari.
Let me just finish this
No. Let me. You can recruit out of high school at Florida State a lot easier than you can at Colorado, even if you aren't going to every high school, because there's lots of really good players who can just drive to your campus. You can't do that at Colorado. Like, if you want to get people to come visit you in Tallahassee, it's a 5-hour drive from Atlanta. It's a 4-hour drive from Orlando. It's a 3.5-hour drive from Jacksonville. Kids from Mobile can come on over. Kids from Birmingham can cut down. Like, you can get good players to come see you, and they don't even have to get on a plane. You don't have to work as hard as you do at Colorado to get them to come see you.
No, you absolutely don't. I don't know that I would want to hire a coach at a place that wants to win national titles that doesn't want to work as hard. Like that's the problem for me. Like
he's got an advantage that the other coaches don't, in that people want to come see him. Whereas if you just got a guy, or even if it's a good coach, they might not necessarily want to. Yeah. But
now imagine if he had that advantage and worked really hard.
I know. I get it. I said the same thing. But what he's doing is working. And we said it wouldn't.
I'm with you. Like, I don't want to disparage Colorado because what he's doing is excellent. Like, I wrote a column last week that we should start paying attention for the right reasons. Like, in my position with Deion is, like, I think a lot of people like came into this thinking, well, this is going to be a clown show. He doesn't know how to coach. He's got no coaching experience. Like, he's hired a pretty good staff. And even after the Sean Lewis thing, I was like, oh God. But like, he's figured out a way to put together a staff.
I would say their offense is more effective now than it was last year. So it worked.
Yeah. But you're in a position where you're doing all the things from a football standpoint, a program building standpoint, that make me feel like, okay, that would work at a big place. The thing that scares me is that I have a understanding and a thought of what you need to be at those places. And Deion Sanders, with full effort, is if Deion Sanders was at least trying at Colorado, because it's like, oh, well, maybe he's not going on the road because he doesn't feel like they have the NIL money to go get it. Okay, fine. But trying there, I feel like it would work. But I'm not even sure that Deion Sanders wants to be a college coach long term. Like, that's the thing. Like, are we even sure of that piece of this? Like, do you think that it's like his life goal right now to build a long-term sustainable football winner in college? Like, I don't know that any of his behavior.
I don't know that it is at Colorado. I don't know that it is at Colorado, but and I know the Colorado people don't want to hear this. Like, JD Piquel put out a video right after that Stephen A thing and said, "Look, what's wrong with the job he has now? Like, why can't he just stay at Colorado and do this?" But
give him truth serum, Andy, right here in the neck. Deion, do you want to be Florida State's coach for the next 15 years?
It's a good question. And I think his pursuit of the guy we would think would be the quarterback of the future tells you that he's planning on being at Colorado next year.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if you're recruiting at that level and you're bringing guys in, I mean, that to me does say that. It does. So it makes me wonder if you can go on the Oprah Winfrey show and SNL and all the other things he goes on. I think he should get on an airplane and go try to get a top. Do you know what Colorado would be if they worked the portal as good as they did and then signed top 30 classes? I'm not even asking him to go sign a top 15
the most talented team in the Big 12 every year.
They would own the Big 12. And honestly speaking, I know Florida State and Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State are sexier big-time programs, but in the new system of this sport, if you're able to sign the types of classes that like even Kansas State signs, and then you can go add 5 awesome players through the portal that are the skill position players, and then maybe sign a 5-star offensive tackle, which he's already proven he could do, they would literally own the Big 12 and create a winning. Like, my criticism of Deion Sanders was never from a place of, I don't believe this could work. In fact, if you go back to The Athletic in the weeks and months after he got hired at Colorado, every single column I wrote about Deion Sanders was, holy shit, this is going to be awesome. My disappointment with Deion has been the output in terms of the things that we expect coaches to do during the offseason, during their Friday nights, like that he does not do. That makes me question whether he will ever be able to get to the potential that his star actually, is. Like, he is famous. He's articulate. He's funny. He's handsome. Like, people want to be around him. People want to meet him. People want to fly to Colorado to see him. He has every advantage in the world. If he would just like wake up every morning like Dan Lanning with that fire in his belly to go get kids. Like, you are driven not by Louis Vuitton jokes and cool offer letters. If you were driven by the pursuit of talent accumulation, You literally, I don't even think it's crazy to say. I think that Deion Sanders could win a national championship at Colorado. I literally do. In this new world, if you actually got to a point where you used your star, your main qualification to recruit your ass off in the high school ranks and then go get the best players in the portal that you can get to supplement that roster, if the sport is actually flat, like I think you could even make the case that it's easier to get to the position to win a national championship at Colorado than it is at Alabama. Now, the last part is, and it's the elephant in the room, but it has to be addressed, is that if Colorado can't pay NIL money to high school players, then you'll never be able to sign top 10 classes. I don't care how cool Deion is. He gets a discount. They're going
to be able to pay whatever the revenue share cap
So
is.
why is Colorado not a place that he would like? If you want to be a great coach, what would be cool? I mean, I know alma mater is a strong pool for people. I'm not going to discount that, but what would be the coolest? Like, you took this program that was in the dumps. It was a shit program. There's no other way to say it. And then made them a perennial winner because you're Deion Sanders. What better ego boost is that? Like, I actually think that you are at a place, as long as we are including we're not in the super era or Super League era, like Colorado legitimately could make the playoff this year. If they win out, who knows how the Big 12's like, they could win the Big 12 this year. That's not over yet.
Not over at all. And
so the
Deion effect does supplement, like, even if you, this is where I think the rev share thing is interesting, because you do have a budget. You may not have as big of a budget, or you might not have a collective that kicks in as much, above that as Alabama or Ohio State does, but you have Deion. And that helps get you legitimate, real, like, we just did an ad where Travis Hunter's in the ad. Like, he's getting paid by JLab for that, by EA Sports for that. And a lot of that is because now Travis Hunter
who's the
is
biggest
awesome
star in the sport this year?
Deion Sanders.
Well, yeah, but who's
Travis
the biggest
Hunter.
player?
Travis Hunter.
You don't have to go to Alabama anymore to be a great marketing campaign. Like, you don't.
Yeah.
I just, and I don't know that Deion, like, I'm not even asking him, and this is the disconnect I think people have with me. I'm not asking him to go put together a Georgia class. I'm asking him to go put together, like, I don't know,
A Kentucky class?
Yeah, or a South Carolina class.
A South Carolina
or a Mississippi State class.
No, a South Carolina class is exactly what you want, because a South Carolina, like, if you look at Shane Beamer's recruiting over the last few years, like, he'll sprinkle in 5-stars.
Nick Barber in there. Yeah. Like, they
Yeah.
got guys. So, like, the thing is that, like, I get called a Deion Sanders hater all the time. And I think that's just the temperament of the fans who, like, root for Deion. I actually have so much love for him. Like, in terms of, like, he could be the person. We talk about, what do you need to do? Like, he could literally
you're just, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed, because you want
Yes, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed.
You want him to feel the same way about high school recruiting you do, but in his reality, he may not have to. And you're saying, I want this ideal version. He may be like, I'm good enough with just getting them to the point where they can win the Big 12. Like, we're not inside his head. But
what if he woke up with Dan Lanning fire in his belly? That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Don't you think that would be lethal?
Oh,
am I not allowed to be disappointed in that? That when he got the job,
if you want to. Yeah, I think you should tell him that, Coach Prime.
One day I
just want to let you know how disappointed I am in you.
One day I want to. I don't know that he would ever talk to me in one-on-one. It's hard to get him because he's Deion Sanders. And I don't think that we could have a real discussion about it in a press conference setting. Like, I can't just ask one question without coming off as a
I do think in private he would talk to you about it.
If we could have him on the show and just have a real discussion about what your plan is and how you view the sport, what you want. Like, I don't know the answer to these questions. I would love to hear his real perspective.
Well, and I think that's what I find interesting, and why I think I might have been wrong on this, because I was looking at it through a prism of, here's how it's always worked. And the more this goes, the more things change, the more I start to realize I don't know how it's supposed to work going forward. And I don't know that a lot of other people do either. So everybody's trying to find the best way to make it work. What Deion is doing might work just as well as what we were suggesting. So I don't know. all I see is his team getting better every week. So I'm thinking maybe he's onto something. So we'll find out.
We have to say this right now. If you are a person who criticizes Deion Sanders, and I've been, I don't know if you have much, but if you are loud when they stink, or you make a tweet that is a joke when they're getting their ass kicked by Nebraska, you cannot be silent when they're winning. You can't.
No.
Like, that's not how this works. So, Deion, hats off to you. Like, you're doing a really good job. Your team is really fun to watch, and actually, I thought very disciplined. Like, you would think like they would with their the way people view them, like, oh, they're in it for clicks, not wins, like all that stuff, like that reputation. You would think they would be not disciplined. They'd have a bunch of penalties. They wouldn't be prepared. Like, they are prepared and playing clean football. Like, and
the thing is, they're now starting to do some of the things that you didn't think they were going to be able to do. Like, I'm watching them run into the end zone in the red zone. And I didn't think they would ever develop a running game good enough to do that consistently. But they're starting to do that now. Like, it's not perfect by any stretch, but it's good enough to keep the defense from just teeing off on Shedeur. Like, they've done a good job figuring out what their weaknesses are, improving on some of those things, and then really kind of enhancing what their strengths are. So, yeah, hats off, because I wasn't sure this was, like, I thought they'd be bowl eligible. I thought they would improve some this year, but I think they've improved quite a lot. So,
there's no question. There's no question.
Very excited to see what this race looks like the rest of the way. The Big 12 race is going to be fun going down the line. You got BYU, Iowa State, Kansas State, and Colorado. That's pretty much that's who's left in it right now. And it could be a little bit of a jumbled mess there at the end, but I can't wait to see how it turns out. All right. Speaking of the Big 12, let's go to the bottom of the Big 12, because we talk a lot about the dudes who leave their team, who quit because of NIL, who just shut it down. I think we also need to highlight the players who, and this is most players, who do love their teammates, who love their schools, who want to keep playing. Ollie Gordon II came into the season, everybody thinking he's the best back in the country. He had a great year last year. He has not had a good year this year. Oklahoma State has had a terrible year this year. They've been awful in Big 12 play. And he got asked about what happens, now. Do you shut it down? And here's what he said.
Because I finish what I start. My mom always taught me that you finish what you start. And who would I be to give up on my team because our season's not going how we want it to go? If that was fair, I could have given up last year. But our season was good, so just because our season's not going how it's supposed to, I'm supposed to give up now. I find that's really weird. And the way that people can just sit there and say that is crazy. But, they're wasting their breath saying it because I'm not giving up on my team.
I don't think it's crazy at all. I think that I really do think that's how most people feel. And I think that's how most players feel. We end up talking about the guys who leave because it's news when they leave. But this is how most players feel. And this is a really good player who's going to go to the NFL and is going to get drafted and is going to have a chance to make a roster no matter what he does the rest of this season. But I would imagine that if you're a GM, if you're somebody who might end up coaching Ollie Gordon in the future, you're loving seeing that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a funny thing that you say, think about how many really good players just play and you never talk about it. Like, I think that most players feel this way, but it's always nice to hear. It's a good attitude. And, and frankly speaking, like, if I were him, Andy, and I'm a weak man, I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would be strong enough to do that just because of all the money that's at stake. But it's great to hear and great to see. And you root for guys like that.
Yeah. And it's just been such a tough season for them. It feels like everything's gone wrong. I'm now firmly convinced that Mike Gundy should do whatever he can to keep the expectations low at Oklahoma State. Because whenever we think they're going to win 4 games, they win 10. And whenever we think they're going to win 10 games, they win 4. Well, not 4. They win 6 at least, because they have an 18-year bowl streak, which, if you know the history of Oklahoma State football before Mike Gundy was the coach there, that's amazing. And it might actually end this year if they don't get off the schneid here. But yeah, it's really impressive. And you hope that they can break through. They're playing Arizona State this weekend. Ari, if I told you before the season that Arizona State would be favored in Stillwater come November, you would have thought I was insane.
I would have thought you were insane. For sure. Crazy sport.
Well, good luck to Ollie Gordon the rest of the way. There is no rest of the way for Michigan quarterback Jack Tuttle. He announced his retirement from college football yesterday. He's had an elbow injury that never quite healed. He just suffered his 5th concussion. So he said he's got to put his health first. And so that's, if you were wondering why Michigan went to Davis Warren when they did, that's what happened. But it was tough reading that from Jack Tuttle because, clearly he does not want to be shutting this down. He'd love to keep playing, but sometimes the body just doesn't let you play.
Yeah. And good luck to him. And, I guess the experience of playing there and at the other 3 places or 2 places he played will carry him through to probably find some great success in life. I'm rooting for him.
Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. You talk to the Michigan guys who play with Jack Tuttle. Like, Jack Tuttle's going to be fine. Like, whatever he wants to do, he's going to be good at. But good luck to Jack Tuttle going forward. Great career. It's been a lot of fun watching you. Ari, it's been a lot of fun talking about all this. You need to get in the kitchen because tomorrow is a Wendy's Sauciest Take Wednesday. You owe me 3 saucy takes. I will be judging the sauciest of the lot. We want no vegan nug. Like, sauceless vegan nugs are what we're worried about. I think I had 1 sauceless vegan nug take last week, and I promise I'll never do that again.
The last time I was in the kitchen, I dropped a knife off the kitchen counter that landed on my foot facing downward. So that's how things are going for me today. But hey, you know what? I'll get back in the lab and I'll come up with some. And it wasn't a butter knife. Like, I have a gash in my foot right now.
Your life is such an adventure.
I'm just trying to make a sandwich for my daughter. That's all I was trying to do. But I'll come up with something. We're going to be ready to roll. I thought that was a really clean, efficient, entertaining, and passionate show. And I was excited that we get that on tape.
I like that. We let you cook on Dion. We let you cook on Mario Cristobal. I'm good with it. Yeah. By the way, I want to let you guys cook too. Thursday, as you know, is a Dear Ari and Andy show. Send in your questions. You know where to find us on social media. I'm at Andy_Staples on all your various social media platforms. Ari is at Ari Wasserman on your various social media platforms. You can also email your question to AndyStaplesOn3@gmail.com. That's AndyStaplesOn3@gmail.com. You know we love your questions. They drive the show. Now, it is 10:50 a.m. on the East Coast. 10 minutes from now, on this here On3 Sports channel on YouTube, you got the hard count with JT Piquel. So go say hi to JD, get in his chat him up. We'll talk to you tomorrow.